sat down to watch my very first feature, my very first film ever, and I was horrified. I had little hints along the way of the mistakes that were being made, but I had no idea it was this bad. Welcome to Indie Film Podcast. I'm Victoria.
And I am Chuck, and this week I'm sick of everything.
And I am sick of writing introductions.
Well, then let's just move on to the topic. Burnout.
As described by the World Health Organization, burnout is an occupational syndrome from chronic workplace stress characterized by energy depletion or exhaustion, increased mental distance, cynicism about the job, and reduced professional efficacy or effectiveness. And while not a disease and more of an occupational hazard, it can lead to more pressing issues like depression if left unchecked.
Oh, nice. I'm getting anxious and burnt out just listening to you read that so quickly.
Well...
So why should indie filmmakers be worried about burnout?
Well, most indie filmmakers should worry about burnout because we wear a lot of hats. We burn the candle at both ends. We're going all the time, and it can be kind of real. And maybe it's okay to just talk about it and accept that feeling burnt out, even about something you're passionate and you love, is totally valid.
Yeah, and it's actually ubiquitous on all job sites. All Hollywood sets, they happen a lot too. And before we talk about our own examples, I read an interesting example about the movie Deliverance. Are you familiar with Deliverance?
I am familiar with Deliverance.
Yeah. And so that's the gentleman traveling in a canoe going down the river, and then the famous banjo riff.
Yes.
So great movie. So the making of John...
I love that this movie made the banjo riff famous.
Yeah, I think that's... Yeah, I think a lot of people know the banjo riff more than the movie. I would just about guess. That's how I was introduced to Deliverance.
Fair. Okay, so
the making of... Because I was introduced to the film young, and you can't really watch it until you get a lot older because of the end. So the making of John Boorman's Deliverance is full of horrific production stories, one of which includes an alleged fist fight that broke out between the director and the screenwriter, James Dickey. Even more worrisome was Boorman's decision to have his leading actors perform all their own stunts in the movie.
Oh, no.
Which was dangerous since the plot follows the characters as they head out on a perilous canoe trip. Burt Reynolds once said Boorman was adamant about filming the movie in chronological order in case an actor died.
Yeah, that seems like a actually very realistic fear when you're making all these actors do their own stunts.
Yeah, and it would be easier to shoot chronologically. I mean, not it would be easier to do it for performances, but shooting chronologically is not necessarily that efficient.
No.
But if someone's going to die, it's very efficient. Okay. Anyway, in one scene, Reynolds was in a canoe when it went barreling over a waterfall. He cracked his tailbone. Jon Voight, meanwhile, put his life on the line to film a rock climbing sequence without a harness or any wires. Boorman wanted the scene to be shot in a close-up, preventing Voight from using a stunt double. And you can find that article on IndieWire that talks about dangerous sets and sets where people got burnt out. But Deliverance, obviously, they were not super happy.
No, I don't see feeling great about that one. I don't know if there's a role I would be like, yeah, I'm ready to risk my life for this. I don't know. Because especially on the rock climbing thing, that was very legitimate fear.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I mean, any of the canoeing stuff.
Yeah.
You never know. Accidents happen all the time.
Yeah, you got to train. You got to train for the part, though, if you're an actor, right? Hopefully Jon Voight was training on rock climbing.
I mean...
Even though that wasn't necessarily what the character was.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about some of your burnout stories personally, Victoria?
Yes, I have. My favorite burnout story. I don't think I want to phrase it as my favorite.
Let's start with favorites.
Story. My favorite burnout. No, it was late spring into summer of 2022.
Okay.
So the main period that I'm thinking about is 4 months. But if you extend it out a little bit longer, there was more. I had simultaneously. I was creating and designing all the assets for the fundraiser gifts for The Man Who Would Not Shake Hands because we had giveaways and things.
Which you can see online right now. That film's actually available on YouTube.
Yes. So if you would like to see the chaos that is The Man Who Would Not Shake Hands and all the decades that we decided to cover for God only knows what reason in one short film, you can find that.
Right on.
And then we were, of course, finishing up all the pre-production stuff, finalizing all the locations, the catering, the forms, the props, everything like that. We were starting test shots and had our first actual couple of shooting days.
Yeah.
And also organizing a fundraiser screening for a collection of local short films, one of which I was still finishing post-production on, but it was a completely different set of films and a different fundraiser for a completely different charitable organization.
Oh, nice.
I was in early stages of directing a musical at a local community theater, which was the first musical I had ever directed at that point. I was also
that was the Evil Dead musical.
Yes, Evil Dead the musical. Which
right on. So you're getting ready for that in October.
Yes. And then attending film festivals for yet a different short that I'd completed recently.
Nice.
I was writing my first book. I was flipping a house, and I was working full-time, but like technically a little bit more than full-time because I was actually leaving one position and transferring into a new one. So the stress of ending one job and starting a new one was very real. So that was all a 4-month period.
That's a lot of stuff.
It was a lot of stuff. But then if you expanded it out to include the rest of the summer and the fall, then it also continued into actually filming The Man Who Would Not Shake Hands and doing all of the post-production on that, and then also doing everything for the musical and continuing to flip the house because that was an ongoing saga. So,
And what was the burnout like for you?
Painful.
Yeah.
It was the first time in my life that I can recall, and I tend to be an overcommitter. And not manage my time incredibly well. And I know that I do this. I was driving home from work one day, and it was summer, almost summer. So the days were a little bit longer, not like sunsets at 10 p.m. late like we get in the middle of July and August, but later. And the sun was already going down on my way home from work, where I still had a whole night of work ahead of me. And I was just like, I think for the first time ever, I have too much on my plate.
Nice.
I felt very, very exhausted and completely detached from most things.
So you were just going through the motions.
Yeah. I wasn't really enjoying most of it, especially not the way that I wanted to be.
Yeah.
And it was exhaustion in a whole different way.
Yeah. No, I totally get that. If you hear scratching on the door, just so you know, there is a cat that is outside the studio that wants to get in.
I was just going to leave
audible.
people wondering about the
just
scratching.
in case you can hear it. I don't know if I can fix it in post. So I actually have a similar story where I bit off way more than I can chew. And what year was you? This was so for me. It was March of 2021 through March of 2023. Yours was
so it overlapped. Yeah, because mine was like end of March, early April 2022 into the summer. And then by the time you pulled in the fall as well, then it just... So basically, the back half, a little more than the back half of 2022 was just chaos.
Right on. No, so I think...
But yours was like a 2-year period.
It was a 2-year period, but I think a lot of us coming out of the pandemic, we felt like we just needed to be super productive.
Yeah, we felt like we'd lost some... And to be fair, I think that was a very... common feeling among everybody. It was everybody felt like we've just had years of our lives kind of like
removed.
Stolen.
Yeah, and so we need to
stolen.
make up.
Yeah, like that's not the right word here. It's not.
It just feels like it's missing.
Yeah, we haven't been able to do so much for so long.
Yeah, and so for me during that time, I was able to. This is just a kind of a list of all the things that I helped or accomplished. I shot and edited, I helped produce, edit, and capture sound for 12 short films. That's the Chit Chat series on Lower Gentry Studios' YouTube channel. I shot a feature film, or helped produce and do audio on a feature film, Stalking at Table Rock.
And had post-production for it, too.
Post-production for that as well, post-sound. And then 13 live music videos on Treasure Valley Live. I also released a 4-song EP and 16 singles with my brother as the band The Orange Teeth, because I wanted to learn how releasing music worked. And so, that all comes down to like a bunch of short films. I also probably worked on other sets, and I think you wanted me to be on The Man Who Would Not Shake Hands for sound.
Yeah.
And that was like right in the middle of that. And I was just kind of like barely able to breathe. And it's
I'm not taking on it. I don't care if it's paid. I'm not taking on more projects right now.
Yeah, it was just a lot. It was just a lot. And let's talk about...
But that was important to have that boundary and say no. Because I think, I know burnout's kind of a rough topic to talk
Yeah.
about, I think, because so many people feel like something this intangible shouldn't be real or shouldn't be affecting them as much as it does.
Yeah.
And I also think that there's sort of this, I don't know if it's sort of an offshoot of the sunk cost fallacy,
Yeah.
but this idea of, because this is how I've felt ever since then, is I don't have as much on my plate as I did back then.
Mhm.
So why do I feel overwhelmed now?
Yeah.
I know how much I can do because I've done it before.
Correct.
And now if I have less on my plate, but I'm feeling just as exhausted or super tired and just, I don't have the energy to do this, I can't pull 3 all-nighters in a row anymore.
No.
And I refuse to admit that that is because we're aging. That is not a thing.
Good point.
I think that it just helped set really unrealistic expectations in my brain for what is an allowable threshold of productivity.
Yeah.
And I hate that most of all because that is so wrong. If anybody else came to me with as much stuff as is on their plate and is like, yeah, but this isn't as much as I was doing 3 years ago, whatever.
Yeah.
I shouldn't be exhausted by this. I know I can do it. I did it once. I can do it again.
Yeah.
It's like,
And I still had time to exercise during that time every once in a while or something.
impressed.
Oh, okay. No, I'm just saying hypothetically.
Oh.
No, but I did. I did make time though. I was teaching as well, and then I had a job.
Jesus.
So the summer was nice, but then that summer I took a job doing electronic videos for a large electronic manufacturer here.
Because you weren't doing enough.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I also like if I were to add all that other stuff in there, there's like countless YouTube videos with my hands in there showing how to like repair computers and stuff. So that I didn't even include that, and I did all the.
You were a hand model the entire time.
Yeah. Plus hand modeling.
I
Which
mean,
I had to learn that on set. So I don't know what John Voight's complaining about. I mean, yes, I know that he needed to learn how to rock
Whatever.
climb, and it was pretty dangerous. But hand modeling, there's a lot that goes into that,
Yeah,
and it
you
was
gotta
tricky.
subsist on a diet of Diet Coke and cigarettes. I mean, no,
Yeah.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. That is just a very old joke.
Yeah.
And thankfully, I hope model culture does not embrace that the way that it used to. I really hope.
Well, should we talk
Okay.
about some ways that we've dealt with our own personal burnout? Because I've done that, or maybe we should talk a little
Yeah, I
bit
was like,
about some
first,
humility.
I want to hear. Yeah, I was like, I would rather hear an embarrassing moment from you.
Okay, well, I do have a moment of humility
Okay.
from recent history, and I talk a lot about my sound experience, which I'm self-taught.
Yeah.
So I'll preface it with that. But I recently did post audio on a short film that our friend and listener Cody Lockwood did the
Yes.
location sound. He did great location sound on the short film set. And I realized when I brought all the audio into my sound editing software that he was recording polywaves.
Okay.
And
so
I
for those of us who don't do audio, can you tell me what a poly wave is?
So what a polywave is like a stereo wave file has 2 channels, left and right.
Okay.
But if you're doing location sound, location sound recorders can usually do a channel for each input separately, plus the mix, but it's all in one file. So I was recording separate files because I learned how to record doing music where I'd want to have the instrument on one separate audio file, just a mono one,
Yeah.
or the microphone one separate audio file. But apparently it's like standard for location sound recorders to record in a poly wave file, and I didn't even know that. But there were a couple corporate people that never messaged me back after I sent them my files because I sent them. I have everything labeled in folders and things like that, but it's
Yeah,
a lot
but-
easier to sync one file in post than to sync multiple.
Yeah, I'm thinking back on every time you've worked sound, and I go through and I take all 4 to 6 layers
Yeah, that's
that I have. And
That's
I
how you
just-
record music, but you're not supposed to record film location sound that way. So that was like a humbling moment for me. Like, I don't know. There's a lot of stuff I don't know because I was never taught.
No, like
do these
how would
things.
you know that unless you were specifically getting a sound file from somebody else? And
Yeah.
as somebody who typically does the sound recording,
Absolutely, and I do a lot of the post work on my own thing too. So
Yeah.
it's like I'm used to my own stuff. So anyway, it's good to work with other people.
It does
get on
expand
set
your horizons in new ways.
and learn some lessons. So thanks so much, Cody, for teaching me that one.
And now, anyone listening, if you are an aspiring location sound recordist, polywaves.
Polywaves, for sure.
That's fun.
Do you want to talk about some ways that you've mitigated burnout?
I do.
Okay.
Because I am not good at it yet. I'm still working on it.
Right on.
I can be a work in progress. I'm allowed to be a work in progress.
Well, as long as it's getting better and not worse, then that's important, right?
So I stole one method, and maybe this isn't the best way to deal with burnout. This is more how I deal with the aftermath of admittedly committing to too many projects.
Lots of booze. No, I'm just kidding.
Yes.
Don't do that.
Yes. No. I mean, sometimes it helps. But
Well,
not while you're working. Not while you're working.
You got to have the cocaine or the meth to get you through the project. And then the booze to sleep.
There was one marketing team that I worked on that were very, very big proponents of, we drink wine at night, and that's how we come up with all the good ideas. And then we will drink as much coffee as we can fit inside ourselves in the morning to make those ideas happen.
Right on. I wonder what the toilet paper budget was for that office.
I assume pretty substantial. I don't know. I don't want to find out.
With the coffee cost, that's somebody's salary.
That's somebody's, for sure. Because the wine wasn't cheap either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Tech industry, man. They splurge for the good stuff. Anyway.
So what's your advice?
So my advice is to follow what I like to call the snowball method.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure I stole that.
Okay.
I think from some finance guy who has this theory on, like, you have to pay down certain debts first. I don't remember if it was like you're supposed to pay down like your...
I'm familiar with that idea where it's like some people say pay down the highest interest rate debt first.
Yeah. So that way, then once you're done with that, because it's the one costing you the most money, then once you're done with that, then you take all that money and you put it all into the next one and your snowball's a little bigger. Or maybe it was a waterfall. I go with snowball because I think it's fun to imagine it rolling downhill and just gaining more momentum as it goes, because that's what I really, really need. But I also gain more momentum as I get other things done, because that is encouraging and inspiring to me. So I start with whichever one is like the biggest, most problematic obstacle.
Yeah.
For example, rather recently, like last week, I was realizing I physically cannot take any more projects on. I have no more available drives to record to with my camera.
Oh, yeah. That's a good limitation.
Yeah, they are all full.
My hard drives are full and I missed the Black Friday sales. So unfortunately, I'm just going to wait for another sale, and that's when I'll take on my next project.
No, it wasn't even fair. That sale ended before Black Friday. That wasn't even fair.
Yeah, there was a hard drive. I
was so mad.
Yeah, there was a hard drive I almost bought.
8 terabytes. 8 terabyte SSD for like $420 or something.
Yeah, it was really cheap. And I wanted to get one too, and then they sold out immediately.
Yeah, but there was still another alternative on a less reputable shopping site.
Yeah, true.
Well, probably as reputable.
Temu.
No, it wasn't. I would
It's
not
just
trust
like
anything from that site. Absolutely not. No, but the
feathers
logo looks a
inside of
little
a
bit
case.
like a smiley face going from A to Z, if you know what I'm talking about.
Oh,
Had
yeah.
another one that was not out of stock. It was completely available. It was in my cart. I was just waiting until the day before Black Friday or 2 days before, when all the sales started. And then I was like, okay, cool. Now I can get all the other toiletries and staples. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It was no longer on sale by the time I
So
went
the
to
lesson
check
here
out.
is just spend your money when you have it.
Spend your money when you have it.
That's how we avoid burnout.
Smoke them if you got them. That's what I'm saying. Smoke them if you got them.
So you avoid burnout by just waiting until you can't possibly have any more room for projects on your hard drive.
No,
Okay.
but what I did do was look at what project is taking up 2 of my drives right now,
Oh, nice.
as opposed to just 1.
Oh, there
So
we
if
go.
I finish that one, now I have 2 drives that I can actually use.
Yeah.
And that's good. And then there's another project. Perfect. I'll finish that one up because that one's on my 4 terabyte and I know I'm going to need that. So I can nip that one in the bud next. And it's just sort of that snowballing effect of, okay, yes, I have my daily to-dos. Yes, I have my emails or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But these are the biggest literal obstacles to my brain space and my camera's brain space. So that's how I decide what to do.
Oh, right on. Well, yeah, that makes sense because you are building up momentum then because
Yeah.
you got your stuff. You cleared out a hard drive.
Exactly.
That's feels measurable.
Now if I need to take footage off of the SD cards inside my Canon, I can because it has a drive to go on to.
Nice.
Because that was the problem.
Yeah, you got to push those projects off too. I enjoy deleting them when I do like a client's project, and I'm like, I gave this to you. I told you I'm going to delete it at the end of the year, and I left it up for you to grab, and I hope you have it because this is getting deleted. And then I delete it, and then inevitably wait for them to be like, oh my god. I had one come back from like a year.
Oh, it was a year and a half.
A year and a half ago, where they're like, "Do you have these files?" And that's oddly enough for the polywave. I'm like, I did the pose sound for that, so it was more than one track anyway. But I sent them all the stems, but I had held on to it for that long.
Oh, that's
on my
impressive.
End. So it's like, stuff happens when you're in film and video and you're doing commercial stuff. You understand, and your own projects too. But I think my lesson when I was trying to do way too much coming out of the pandemic was I realized I wasn't enjoying the stuff that I was doing.
That's even worse.
Yeah.
No wonder you were burnt out.
Well, you can't, I realize you have to balance the part that you like with the part that you dislike.
Yeah.
And I'm not a fan of post work. Like, that's not my favorite thing to do.
Okay.
It's not that I dislike it. It's just that a lot of post work is not necessarily all that creative. And so when you're mixing songs, when you're, doing audio mixing and dialogue cleanup, and that's ends up being a majority of what you're doing as far as like getting out there shooting, everybody knows that the post work is longer than the shoot days.
Yeah.
Usually. And so when you get that many projects piled on you at once, then you don't have time to do the part that you enjoy, which is, like the sound design aspect, which is probably about like 20% of audio mixing and post, depending on the project. Like if it's a horror film or something gnarly, then you get to do some really cool stuff. But so if you're out there and you are not enjoying the thing that you're doing, I think that's kind of like a huge red flag to step back.
Yeah.
And that's honestly why I quit my job.
Yeah.
Doing those training videos for tech people. Like, I started to really hate it. And I'm like, I don't want this to ruin my experience with a camera.
Yeah.
And I don't want this to ruin my experience with audio editing. It's like, this is not fun. No. It's taking up 40 hours a week of my time, sometimes more, if they'd get a busy weekend. And it was awful. And so it's like, if I don't do this, then it's going to ruin it. And then, who knows what I end up doing. Yeah.
Because at that point, if like your isn't that why they say don't always make your hobby a job?
Oh, yeah, true.
Because if it brings you joy, maybe don't also make your financial security depend on it.
Yeah, for sure.
Which indie filmmakers don't always have that luxury, right? So maybe find another take up baking and don't become a pastry chef. But let camera work be your job.
Yeah, focus on the one aspect that you enjoy on that.
Yeah.
Because it's like walking through every single project start to finish was a lot when I was working at the tech firm.
Yeah.
Because it's like, first of all, shooting on those projects was not all that enjoyable because you're filming electronics, right? But like, if you enjoy indie filmmaking being on set, there's a lot of opportunities for you to fill in, and then you get to interact with people. Or if you're a little bit more of a loner and you enjoy just working on things in post, like, I don't think that would be that bad of a thing to do for a career if you feel like you can just
focus
hone in
on it and
be able to do it and enjoy it. But like, it was just too many projects where it was from the very beginning all the way to the end and watching it go all the way through.
Oh, that's a lot.
It turns into a lot. So be careful out there.
No, that's a lot.
Do you have any tricks?
I don't have a lot of tricks other than sort of making sure you own your schedule.
Yeah.
So I know what parts of the day are best for me. And there's that one rule or whatever, like don't send emails first thing in the morning or something like that.
Oh, you send them at the end of the day?
No, somebody says, like, you're not supposed to do, like, your email work at the beginning of the day.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's some big person, or I don't know, Tony Robbins or I don't know.
Tony Robbins.
I'm throwing that out there, and I'm going to be completely wrong, and it's just going to be some random corporate dude who is like, yeah, maybe don't send emails at the start of the day. I don't know.
Yeah, there's so much advice out there to do anything correctly.
It's fine. But like, I like getting those itty bitty tiny things just checked off my plate while my brain's still kind of kicking in to gear, because then My inbox is clear and
Yeah.
I feel like I can focus now. Everything is decluttered and I can settle into my creative stuff. So that way, like mid-morning as my coffee's rolling and I'm like, okay, maybe a whole pot of coffee is too much for one person. As I get to that point, I really hit my creative stride.
Nice.
I think most people do after a full pot of coffee.
For sure.
Or then at night. I like to do the creative stuff at night too. And especially like collaborative meetings. I want to save those for the end of the day when I have more stuff off my plate and I can really be focused and in the meeting.
Yeah.
Because if I do a meeting in the morning, I am not paying attention to anything you're saying. I'm thinking about my to-do list.
Oh, no, I'm the same way there.
Yeah.
That's good. I actually do the same thing where I wake up and try to just cross stuff off
Yeah.
as quickly as possible.
It feels good. I want the win. Give me the dopamine
Yeah.
and a little check mark.
And what I've learned doing so many aspects of, not so many, but having to go from start to finish on projects is I try to limit the part that I don't enjoy to like 3, max 4 hours a day.
Yeah.
And so if I'm working on someone's project and it's just 100% dialogue cleanup, not my favorite thing to do. It is satisfying, I will say, to get it done.
Yeah.
But in the moment, it's just, it takes focus, but it's arduous. And so I'll make sure that I give them a quote, understanding that the time that it takes me to do that is going to be capped out at, unless there's an emergency, then I'll do like 6 or 8 or 10 sometimes. But it's hard for me to sit at an editing station for that long. Some people can just knock it out, which is impressive. But
it's very impressive. But also, if you're not one of those few people that can do that, that's okay. I don't know if it's good for anybody to sit in front of a computer for 10 hours or more.
no.
I shouldn't say that to people watching our podcast right now, but
Yeah.
when you're finished with the episode, go for a walk.
Yeah, or just walk and listen.
Oh yeah, treadmill desk, one of
There
my
it
best
is.
investments. I love that thing.
Right on. Well, do you want to do a little bit of industry news?
I do have some fun industry news. Okay, so are you ready for this?
Yes.
Gen Z is making movie theaters cool again.
That's awesome.
Actually, I don't know if they're making it cool again, but they're all excited about them again. So movie theater numbers are actually up pretty substantially.
That's big news.
Yeah, we can link the full report. It's, what is it by? It's the Cinema United Strength of Theatrical Exhibition Report.
Okay.
But apparently, the group of 13 to 28-year-olds, their movie theater attendance jumped 25% year over year.
Oh, nice.
Which is a big bump. Things don't.
Yeah.
So they're projecting that 2026 is actually going to be the first year that movie theaters are back to the number that not exactly the same, but they're forecasting it to look more like 2019
Oh,
for
nice.
the first time since
The pandemic.
2020. Yes.
Wild.
And I loved this most of all as a huge popcorn fan. The number one reason that Gen Z wants the theaters is because of the concessions.
Nice.
It has nothing to do with the movies.
Oh, they just like the snacks? Oh, right on. I remember when I was a kid, it was all about sneaking in your own snacks to the theater.
I know. I'm like, wait, they're into it now? Do they know how expensive that is?
Yeah, maybe it's all the same price. I haven't looked at the price of dots since the pandemic, so
don't know
maybe
if I
movie
would
theaters
look
are
at dots.
competitive. Maybe they're the
No, hook me up with some Junior Mints, then let's talk.
Oh, there we go.
Okay. One other note, UCLA data inside this report shows that 10 to 24-year-olds currently rank opening weekend movie going, so
Yeah.
actually attending a movie on opening weekend, is now their number one preferred activity above concerts and sporting events.
Oh, cool.
So movies are making a comeback.
There's hope for us to have our films seen in a theater rather than on someone's frickin' phone.
Exactly. You'll have it heard as it should be heard and
Yes.
seen as it should be seen, and it'll be beautiful. However, I do feel like I should throw in one caveat because this sent me down a little bit of a research black hole.
Yeah.
But Box Office Mojo has released some data indicating that during the last 8 recessions, box office sales have increased 6 times over. It typically always gives them a boost, except for the outlier of the 2020 pandemic, obviously.
Yeah.
Movie theaters weren't open then. But movies are typically just a cheaper form of entertainment than concerts or other live events. Therefore,
Yeah.
they win when money's tight.
Oh, got it. So
So-
this is a recession indicator that people are going to the movies rather than going to a concert because it's cheaper.
Or Gen Z is just making movies cool again.
Or there's just no jobs for Gen Z people.
There's no job
they don't
for
have
Gen
any-
Zers, so all they can
They
do
still
is a
have
movie
to go
theater.
get their education and get their experience. Oh boy. All right.
Anyway.
Shall we end with the featured filmmaker of the week?
I would love to end with the featured filmmaker of the week, Trisha Furhman. And I'm going to do this in my best Trisha impression, knowing full well
Please do.
I've never met Trisha.
But she wrote us a nice note.
It was so good, we couldn't tweak it or change it. We just couldn't.
Yeah.
Emotionally, I was not going to allow myself to. So, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. The 2020 lockdown was a blessing because I was laid off from all my jobs. I finally had time to write a movie, so I did. I had no idea what I was doing, but I did have Google. My chaos was in post-production. After 4 years of production, I sat down to watch my very first feature, my very first film ever, and I was horrified. I had little hints along the way of the mistakes that were being made, but I had no idea it was this bad. I did everything wrong. I hired all my friends. I had a large cast, over 40 every day. I wore all the hats: producer, director, writer, casting, lead role, AD, craft services, set design, etc. I didn't do any research on equipment, so I shot on the Nikon 850D, the one with the autofocus issues. I used the mic on the camera. I can hear Chuck screaming in horror. I trusted an editor who I did very little research on, who ended up stealing my hard drive, and I had to take him to court to get it back, and then took an online course in Adobe Premiere Pro to learn how to edit so I could just do it myself. I may not have went to film school, but I sure got schooled on this film. The thing about having so many people involved in this movie is that I have 40 plus people asking me, so whatever happened to that movie? Almost daily on different social media outlets. People call me Tenacious Trish because I don't know when to quit. So I cut this 1 hour and 40-minute feature into a 14-minute proof of concept, and it got into the semifinals in the Direct Monthly Online Film Festival and won the Human Interest Award at the Female Feedback Film Festival.
That's awesome.
So, Trish,
Great
that's
story.
badass.
Yeah, for sure.
That, I mean, sounds horrible. That sounds... But you learned so much, and you know so much what you would do differently, and damn, that was so entertaining to read. So thank you, Trisha
Thanks for sharing
Furhman.
that humbling story, because
Yes.
it is hard, and you went to study cinematography.
I did.
I did no film school at all. It's
didn't.
tricky, but even with that educational background, getting
Which
on
was
set-
not at a film school, mind you,
Oh,
because
yeah.
that would have been the smart way to do it. But it's fine.
Yeah, we have
It's
to learn
fine.
this way. And
Yeah.
sometimes if you just bite off more than you can chew, it'll be okay. And hopefully you don't get burnt out.
You can always just spit a little bit out, pick it back up later.
There it is.
That's what plates are for.
Good points. I just like to mull over that giant bite. All right. Well, shall we succinctly say farewell?
Sounds wonderful.
Bye.
Bye.